So welcome to the edition of Lowdown, a Dominic Cummings free zone. I'm sure many of you have watched the Prime Minister's briefing today, and I think it was probably quite frustrating for many of us, so we'll bypass that. But what I can promise you is that in the Q&A session I will actually answer the questions and not refer to my original statements. I think that's very important. So just to give you a view as to what's going to come today, I'll start from the back in. We'll give you the latest boxing news, different things that have been happening around boxing, both UK and abroad. A section called Follow the Money, and this today is going to relate to the vaccine and the virus that's out there and what you can learn by following money, and I will explain a bit about that, and it links into my time in horse racing as well. We're going to talk about the financial markets, and we're also going to talk about government debt and what it means with the government borrowing all this money. And whilst it might not be as bad as people are portraying it, and just something that's not been covered in the press, and a certain strategy that the government can follow to reduce their debt down without it costing them so much, which they are in fact pursuing directly or indirectly. And we're going to start off talking about credit cards and interest rates. I'm going to start off with interest rates. The leading instant access savings account is now actually the government. They're offering a 1.16% rate with the national savings bonds. It's an instant access account, and I will come on to this in a minute, because when you invest with the government, it's actually a case of lending the government money, and it's a very cheap way for them to borrow. But what's important about this account, which is very important when interest rates are only 0.1%, is they have to give you 2 months notice before they drop the rate. So previous top accounts like Marcus, which now pays 1.05, they could drop their rate tomorrow at any time that they wish. But this account, which is the government account, has to give you 2 months notice. So if you open that account at 1.16 tomorrow with instant access, you know for a fact that you've got that rate guaranteed for at least 2 months. So that's the top account that I can pass on to you today. For credit cards, if for example any of you are paying interest on credit cards, don't do it. Credit cards and interest are voluntary in this particular climate, and the longest 0% interest credit card as we speak is with TSB, which gives you 30 months, that's 2.5 years at no interest. You don't have to pay a small fee, but you're getting 2.5 years no interest. So look at moving credit cards onto 0% interest rates. If you're paying these ridiculously high rates, which can be 20 or 30%, ditch them, switch them, and get moving on to credit cards. If any of you need any help, like I always say, come and speak to me, and I will drop me a message, and I will do my best to help you. So that's savings and credit cards done. Now we're going on to government debt. Now we've heard so much about this mountain of debt that the government are accruing, and there's without a doubt the debt mountain is huge. And we're told, rightfully so, that the 2 main ways in which government debt is paid down is by austerity, which is true, we've experienced that for 10 years from 2010 onwards, and from increased taxes. Now both of those things do exist, but let's look at the third way that the government debt can decrease. It is by having interest rates low, so that their rate of interest on that borrowing is low. Now that's important in the point that even if you have 6 times, 7 times the government debt, but the interest is 30 times less than it may normally be, when you consider that bank base rate is 0.1, and potentially bank rates can be 1, 2, 3%. So if you had a normal Bank of England rate 2.5% and you're only 0.1, it's 25 times less. So there are opportunities for the government to lend out money much cheaper. And in fact, this week was quite unique in that government gilts were sold on the market at a negative rate. In other words, if you want to buy a government gilt, you pay a premium for owning the government gilt, which means they're lending money and making a profit they're borrowing money and making a profit out of borrowing money. And that's also the same if we move into negative interest rates, which is a strong possibility that is something that we may use, which is actually not a bad thing for stock markets generally. But negative interest rates are a way of the government paying the debt down, because by not paying very much interest but allowing inflation to be 2% or 3%, what in effect happens is the government debt comes down by the fact that the money becomes devalued by inflation. And it's actually the cheapest and smartest way for government debt to reduce. And I do expect the government to use inflation and interest rates as a way of dumbing down debt by actually paying less in the amount that the government owe, but also using inflation to reduce in real term the amount of debt that is reduced. And that does mean that if you use that as a tool, you need to make either less austerity and you don't have to charge as much in taxes. Just a very interesting concept, and a lot is not spoken about this in the market. So I wanted to cover government debt with you today. As far as markets are concerned, it's been a fairly flat week. My clients, all of my clients have made a profit, and many of you watch this, or some of you watch this. We've again shown a profit, whether they be a low or higher risk client, and returns have been between 1 and 3% this week. So it's been a very good week for markets. However, markets are reliant on two things. Number one, that we don't get a spike, we don't get a second spike of infections, because that will have a major problem. And secondly, that there is some form of treatment or vaccine on the horizon. And we're going to cover that in a minute. So markets are something where you have to be very careful. I've spoken to a lot of people this week who are buying individual shares, or they invest in tracker funds. And there are certain times in which, forget buying shares, you can argue tracker funds can work. In environments like this, stock selection is very key, and it's a key to making profit. But that's for another time. That's more individual advice. Okay, follow the money. Now, I'm going to go back into a horse racing story before I tell you about what follow the money means for me in terms of vaccine and what's going on in the world of vaccines at the moment. So in horse racing, we used to own, under diamond racing, it was 23, 24 horses. And there would be some times we would go to the races and we would be told by the trainer, for example, I think your horse has got a great chance of winning today. So you would go there, may not be betting on it, but some people may, thinking your horse has a great chance. And the horse opens up in the betting 2 to 1, 3 to 1, and it goes 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 6 to 1, which tells you there is no money for the horse and people are backing other horses in the race. When that happened, the horses more than often bombed out and did not do what the trainer said, because the money was telling you one story and the mouth was telling you a different story, so it told you to follow the money. Similarly, there were times when we were told that the horses had very little chance of winning in the trainer's opinion, and there would be a massive gamble on the horse, and the trainer would say, I don't know about that gamble, I don't know where the money's coming from, but normally that horse ran very, very well. Once again, don't listen to the verbal, follow the money. And that's very much in many things in this world that it is. Now let me give you my theory on the vaccine. So obviously we go back a while, Sarah Gilbert of the Oxford University, and some of you may have read this, developed a vaccine which she said she thought had an 80% chance of success and would be ready to go in September. It's if you research it, you can research it indirectly. The government came out and said we're hopeful we may have a vaccine by September, and it was rubbished in the first set of reports following a study on monkeys, where the monkeys did show that they weren't getting the pneumonia, they weren't getting the worst part of what we suffer, but there were traces of the virus in their noses. And Sarah Gilbert came out and said it's because of the dose we gave them. We are continuing the trials in America. Hancock gave her plenty of money and enough to give us 30 million vaccines for September. On Thursday this week, America gave AstraZeneca, who are in partnership with Sarah Gilbert, £1.2 billion to produce 100 million vaccines for October. That means they're producing the vaccines now. Now, what does that tell you? Well, in America, they've got a vaccine called Moderna, which is they're working on, and they've got very high hopes of success. But they've given approximately twice the amount of money to the Oxford vaccine. Now, this indicates to me that there will be efficacy in this vaccine, and it will be ready, it will work. And I will cover a caveat with that in a minute. What you don't know for sure with this vaccine is whether it's going to be fully effective. In other words, will it treat the virus and stop the amount of deaths? In other words, it will stop the pneumonia, which is going to stop a hell of an amount of deaths. And will it be a temporary vaccine until a full vaccine gets in? Or will it be a full-blown vaccine? Their biggest problem at the moment is that they aren't able to test the efficacy on enough patients. Sarah Gilbert is very sure that, as sure as it can be, that it's not going to have an impact on the human race, but in terms of, she said it would just give them a fever. But if you follow the money, the fact that AstraZeneca are producing the vaccines, the fact that America's given £1.2 billion, the money is telling you this vaccine will have efficacy of some description. So when you're looking at certain investments, you can make a call that this is going to work. The odds are that it is going to work. The question only is now, when will it be ready by? Because there's not enough of the virus out there at the moment, they may have to go abroad to test the virus. But I am expecting, and I've built into my advice process, that some form of efficacy of a vaccine of some type will be available September, October. Hence why I think that boxing in a small hall hopefully will be back to full effect in March next year, by the time that the vaccine works through and we're able to get everything restored. And that's where all my theory on the boxing and theory on finances work. The golden rule in life: don't listen to what people say, watch what people do. Don't listen to what politicians tell you. I think we know that from today. But watch where the money goes. The money tells you much of what is happening. So moving on to boxing, and I've been in conversation with promoters this week about our fighters appearing on shows. Potential options at the moment for 4 Goodwin boxers. Deals have not been, we've only finalised one actual deal so far, but the others we'll be working on, but there are potential opportunities at the moment. And so we're going to be working hard to find our boxers opportunities whilst the situation is going on. As I said last week, if you find a vaccine September, October time, there may be a chance of putting some form of show on in November, December, not a full-blown show, but we're working on something else for that also for our fighters, because obviously it's very important that we try and create the opportunities that we can. So I haven't ruled that out, but I think we will have to see how things plan on. The board have announced that they're reviewing their status with a view to on the July show date, so we should get more news from them this week. But I do know that the promoters are still planning to plough ahead for towards the end of July and August to get shows out. And in America, Bob Arum and Top Rank are planning to go in June with up to 2 to 3 shows a week initially, and then to put shows on thereafter. And the good news for British boxing fans is there are talks to get those shows on British TV. So whilst we're waiting for the British boxing to come to start, that we could have American boxing for those of you that are missing boxing, like I'm sure we all are, to do that. One other piece of news is DAZN. Eddie Hearn's American backers, they've had to seek further funding because obviously their money situation is drying up with what's going on. This happens with these fledgling companies. What you've got to remember, with companies like DAZN, many fail for each one of those that actually end up succeeding. It requires a large amount of capital, but obviously their funding is in doubt at the moment. And obviously, I don't think it will mean they will cease trading. I think they will get further funding, but it may mean that, and I haven't spoken to Eddie about this, it may mean or may not mean that he has to change his stance, which if he does, he may not be able to do what he was doing in America going forward. But again, we will wait and see what happens with DAZN. We obviously want DAZN to succeed, and we hope they do, for the fact that we get more opportunities for our fighters, the pay is better, and there's big opportunities. But obviously they are in some financial troubles there. Now obviously what we're happy to do now is look at anybody that's got any questions. We'll answer the questions as effectively as we can, and then move on as we do each week. And Kate's looking after us today with the questions from you, so we'll wait and see if Kate's got any.
We've got a couple.
Okay.
The first one's from Clive Duncan. He says, "Hi Steve, it's Mental Health Week. England Boxing are set to launch a 30-minute online mental health awareness session called Box in Mind. Do you recommend this to boxers?"
I haven't seen it yet, so I'll watch it first, but I'd imagine that it should be quite good because England Boxing are doing it. Everything to do with mental health it's anything that anybody can do for mental health is great. I've had boxers that I've worked with who have suffered mental health in the past, and there are some boxers that I look at that have retired who I know suffer and struggle with these type of conditions. But unlike many people in boxing, what I do is I keep in contact with those boxers and make sure they're okay. We regularly do that, and I think that something about boxers that's important is that they receive support from the people that have worked with them in their career and are not tossed to the side when their career's over. Oh, you're finished now, we'll move on to the next one. Very important for me that those boxers that I've worked with and managed, when they do retire from boxing, that we make sure that they're okay. And that can be my contribution or our contribution as a team towards making sure, and Kevin does it as well, to making sure that people are okay. And that's what our wee bit do. But I don't know about the video, but I do actually believe that the way you can support boxers with mental health is those people representing them, like us, actually care and do something about it and support them.
Okay, and the next one's from Julia Magliano. Boris wants to phase out China's input in British infrastructure by 2023 and work closer with the US. What are your general thoughts?
I haven't seen that. Again, you're going to get a lot of posturing at the moment, politically wise. I mean, I'm not a politician. I'm more I'm a financial man and a sports person. But my view is there'll be a lot of posturing at the moment with what's gone on with China. I haven't seen Boris say that, but I'm sure that he's going to say a lot of things, such as, and as well as Trump does, who's threatening China over the Hong Kong situation. So I think what you're going to find there is a lot of posturing over the future months. Bear in mind also that Boris is going to need the US because it's increasingly looking like we get a hard Brexit at the end of the year.
Okay, Karina says, who goes first? Aubameyang or Cummings?
Who goes first? Aubameyang or Cummings? What a good question. Who should go first? Realistically, has to be Cummings. If from what I believe he should have gone. I think when you've got a situation like today, this is a Cummings-free zone. When you have something like today, it's the perception to the public and getting the public to back the government. And I think you're going to get a large portion of the country rebelling against government policy and not having faith in what they say. Aubameyang, I'm an Arsenal fan. Aubameyang should go for his own, for himself. He's a class player. He's better than Arsenal, and I'm an Arsenal fan, and he deserves a chance to play in a team that are going to win things. And I don't feel at the moment Arsenal will. Who's going to go first? I don't know. It depends on how long Boris can tough it out and whether the public really gets stuck in over the next few days. So I think that's a hard one to call. If you ask me to make a call, I would probably say Cummings may be forced to go first, maybe.
Phil Williams says, working within the NHS, there are a lot of mixed reviews from senior healthcare professionals regarding this vaccine. Will you be willing to have a vaccination should one become available?
Okay, it depends for me as far as the vaccine is concerned as to where the vaccine is coming from, Phil. So my view is this: if you're talking about an American pharma company that has been rushed through by Trump to get it there first, I might be a little bit more sceptical. When you are talking about Sarah Gilbert and Oxford, if you look at her track record, she is not somebody in this for profit. She's done amazing work with vaccines over many years. If it was Sarah Gilbert's vaccine and it gave me some protection against pneumonia, I would be first in the line to take it.
Steve Kipp says, answer the dog's question.
But how many dogs we got?
Answer his question.
They do a good job. We've got a lot of dogs here. We rescue dogs that are badly treated. We've got 2 here from Turkey one was found in a dustbin and one was also found elsewhere, and another dog that was brought to us from a thing. But we're a bit of a sucker for dogs, and we rescue them and we love them, but they do make a bit of a racket sometimes.
Terry Conroy says, when do you reckon all shows will continue for small halls?
I think, Terry, the most likely thing is, I spoke to some small hall promoters, and I'm not going to mention names, they're not prepared. They are saying they're not coming back in. They are not going to stage shows anymore. They think it'd be too hard to do it. I think that you've got to take into account when you do small hall, people like you, and I know you sell well, you're still going to go out there and sell tickets. So when is that going to be possible? And I believe that probably to go and do vast numbers of tickets where boxers can earn money, I think it's going to be March next year. If there is some form of vaccine treatment this year, there may be a chance of doing something towards the end of the year, and that will be where managers like myself will take a group of our boxers and create something for them, and that's what I'm working on as a sidelined towards the end of the year. I'm working on the fact that there is a chance that there's a show, a small show towards the end of the year, but unlikely. But I'm working on something else in case I can do a dumbed down version of a normal show. And hopefully we'll have news on that in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Sorry. Will Michael says, what are your top 3 best crisps?
Salt and vinegar, prawn cocktail, cheese and onion. But it's salt and vinegar all day long for me.
Ashley Howard said,
Go on, Ashley, I hope you're well, my friend.
he said, I believe I was your first ever boxer you signed outside of London. I
Yes.
didn't make the most of my career, sadly, due to issues I had been dealing with, but Steve gave me a chance to change my life, and I very much appreciate the time you put into me and my career. Thank you.
Oh, no, Ashley Howard is a really, really nice chap, and he was the first boxer that I looked after outside London. So he's always got a place in the books for that, and he was a pleasure and an honour to deal with. And I thought he was a lovely fellow. I met his partner at the time when she came to York, and I remember all the experiences we had with the coaches. It was, and again, I wished his career had turned out differently as well. But for Ashley had a lot of problems outside the ring, but he's a very good man. And I hope life's treating you well, Ashley.
And the only other question we have today is, how can I contact you, REN Investment?
Drop me a private message on Facebook, like everybody's done. Drop me your mobile number, and I will give you a call. That's what most people are doing to contact me. Just send me a private message with your number. I'll call you, and we'll set up a chat. And I've got to say thank you to what we're talking about. That thank you to. There's been quite a lot of people that I've actually dealt with and have come to me, and I've taken on a lot of new clients from this, and they've all seemed to be very happy with what we're achieving for them, or what we're starting to achieve for them. So I thank you for your support. This is about not only taking new clients on, but also helping those that need a bit of help in life generally, whether it's been about the furloughing, the self-employed benefit system, credit card debts they want to pay off, loans. I'm happy to help everybody that needs help. It's not going to be necessarily about doing new business, but for those of you that have got money, want to invest, or need a mortgage, or need tax advice, or whatever it is, then by all means come and see me, and I'll be delighted to help you there also.
And we've got time for one more.
Yeah.
Phil Williams. Are the TV shows, which are looking very likely within the next 10 weeks, going to have a strict medical procedure prior to fighters being cleared to box?
Yes.
Or has there been no indication from the board?
No,
yet?
there is Phil, and this is part of the problem. I mean, Phil is one. No, I can talk openly now. Phil is one of the fighters we're looking at a fight for, and but the issue has got to be how long they want the boxer there before the fight. So this is what's going to be clarified by the board. There are talks of 2 days to 5 days. If a boxer has to go there 5 days before, we need more money to cover that. So yes, there are going to be procedures, testing, locking in hotel rooms, whatever that may be. And there has been an initial amount of guidelines from the government, but I'm expecting to see revised guidance from the board, but revised guidance from the board. But after what we've seen today, God knows what the guidance is going to be like in a couple of months' time. But yes, there will be extra testing. The ring will have to be cleaned after every fight. There'll be PPE. There will be boxer, trainer, and one other person in the corner. Nobody else will be allowed to the venue apart from that amount of people. No managers at the venue unless they're working the corner. Boxers isolated in hotels. Specific gym to use should they need to use gyms, and quite a few tests throughout the week. And if a boxer tests positive, obviously they go home. That's a brief outline of what they're going to do. But again, I think that guidance is going to possibly change. And
just following on from that, he also asked, does the 2 metre rule need to be relaxed by the government?
I don't feel, you work as an ambulance worker, paramedic, I don't know. I don't know I just think I think one thing we've learned from all of this is don't believe what they're telling you. The medical officers with all the advice we've had, and I'm not people say that everybody that criticises or observes what we're being told is some left-wing got a political viewpoint. I don't, but there's total, utter inaccuracy, contradiction in what we're being told, and I think we have to use our own common sense and forget what they're telling us, because it's the same thing. They're just telling us whatever suits them, whether it be about schools, whether it be about the thing today about use your instinct, not the rules, and whatever else it is. So I think 2 metres seems to be the thing here. But if you go to Denmark and schools, I don't know if you know, it's 4 metres. They keep saying about Denmark, it's 4 metres in schools in Denmark, not 2 metres. So some countries have got further distances. Who's right? I don't think they really know. And again, it's a new virus. I just think we've all got to be very sensible. So, and I think that's what we can do, is just make sure we dodge the bullet, get to the other side and live a happy life, all of us.
That's it for today.
So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you found it all worthwhile. As I say, anybody that needs anything from me, private message me. Hasn't got to be about doing a new investment or doing business with me. If you just need general help, I'm here to help you. And I think sometimes, at times like this, if anybody's sitting at home and worried about something financially, then sometimes speaking to somebody can help you, and I'm here to do that as well. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back here next Sunday, once again at 6:30.